I'm about to share a secret that not a single one of you know. Not a single person that has seen one of my videos could ever guess this about me in a million years. All right, here goes. I really love Final Fantasy. I know, I know, I know that's big. That's big. That's earth-shattering. Nobody in the world could ever guess that, not the videos I've made. I know, but I revealed it, so there it is. That's me. So I've recently come to possession of the DS copy of Final Fantasy IV, and while I've played through Final Fantasy IV many times in my life, you know, it's my first time actually sitting down and playing through the 3D DS version for myself, and I have to say, I'm really impressed with this version of the game, and I really think if you're like me and you've played through Final Fantasy IV multiple times and you just want a new go of it and you're debating if this version's worth it, or maybe you've never heard or played Final Fantasy IV and you want to see what it's all about, I really do think this version is a great version of the game and really brings a new life into it, so I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. So first off, the story of Final Fantasy IV is a very classic story. You know, it's kind of set in that medieval fantasy kind of vibe. It's not like the newer Final Fantasies where it goes into, you know, more modern or, you know, fantasy reality hybrid stories. No, it's a very classic, you know, knights, wizards, you know, kind of magic kind of story. But it's an amazing story. The main character, Cecil Harvey, is a Dark Knight serving under the Kingdom of Baron, and he gets some orders that are really not good. They don't make him feel good about what he's doing. They make him question the character of the king that he served under, and really question the character of himself and whether or not he's doing the right thing. And after questioning the king, he's stripped of his rank, and he's kind of sent to do even more grunt work that, spoilers, is another slaughter mission. And I'll kind of leave it there, but throughout the story, you know, Cecil kind of has to find out what he wants for himself, and a whole, you know, typical Final Fantasy plot kind of unravels from there, you know. And if that plot sounds kind of bare bones, like you've seen it, heard it before, I mean, maybe you have, but something that, you know, especially Final Fantasy is always super good at is the characters and making you care about the characters. They just are written in such an authentic and, you know, endearing way that you kind of immediately gravitate towards them, and you listen to their play, and you kind of root for them. You know, Cecil's an immediately kind of captivating character. You know, Rosa is very sweet, very caring, and not in an annoying way, just in a very, you know, lovable kind of way. And you wanna see everything work out for these characters, you know. And the DS version adds a lot to these characters that I really think makes them even better than the original in some ways. First off, the addition of 3D graphics obviously is the biggest addition that is added in this 3D version, of course. And I was nervous about how this would affect Final Fantasy IV, because obviously that original pixel art, you know, is iconic, and it sets a certain tone, a certain mood, and I didn't want that to be ruined in the transition to 3D. But I gotta say, I really do think the team that worked on the DS version kept that spirit in mind. And it looks phenomenal right off the gate. I'll just say, I think the 3D models kind of have a timeless kind of art style to them. It doesn't look like it's dated or restricted by the DS. No, it looks like they were able to take those 3D models and stylize them in a way that, even to this day, it holds up pretty well. It reminded me of Bravely Default in the best way possible. It's a very pleasing game to look at, and I don't think anything was lost in the transition from 2D to 3D, and in fact, I think a lot of things are enhanced by it. I think right off the gate, you know, just early game, Castle Baron looks much more intimidating, like a castle. The town of Baron, you know, is much more like a town. You know, I know that sounds very like obvious, of course, but something I feel that, especially going back to older Final Fantasies and pixel games in general, is a lot of the areas start to blend in with each other. A lot of towns just start to look the same, like, oh, there's a building here, there's a building here, next town, buildings here, not too much different in between them. But I think that change to 3D, at least in this game, does kind of help differentiate up the locales a bit and really make it feel more dynamic, you know, as an RPG and adventure, and makes you feel like you're going, you know, on this globe-trotting adventure that's so, you know, integral to the Final Fantasy experience. But even the dungeons, you know, even the castles, like I've already mentioned, they feel like castles. They feel like dungeons, not just flat screens with more items everywhere. Not to say that the original art style isn't pleasing, because obviously I've already said I hold it very dear, and it's an iconic, game and presentation in general. I just think that the DS version did a great job at bringing Final Fantasy IV visually into the third dimension. But more with presentation, the addition of voice acting, and cutscenes in general, which I'll go into momentarily, but voice acting adds so much to this game. Just right off the gate with Cecil initially questioning King Baron when he's in his room after being stripped of his rank. It just adds such a layer to Cecil of, you see vulnerability in him, you see his doubt, you see his determination to get to the bottom of this. And then immediately once Rosa comes in, you can hear the worry in her voice, in her voice, the concern, and Cecil kind of immediately changes his tone. He discards that uncertainty and that doubt to try to comfort Rosa. And it's these little, connections between the two that I think is only able to be there through the addition of voice acting, because you get that other dimension. It's not just text, it's not left up to the player's interpretation, which some may argue is better, but I think the addition of voice acting really does add a unique layer to the game that I can't go back to the other version now. But like I was saying, these cutscenes, the cutscenes in general that they add, like, there's a few areas where I wish they would have added cutscenes where they're not. Like, for example, I don't want to go too far into the story because I don't want to spoil anything for people who haven't experienced Final Fantasy IV, even though it's a almost 30-year-old game. But when Cecil is stripped of his rank in the beginning, I kind of would have liked that scene to be voice acted, just because I do think it's an iconic opening scene. The scenes they do add voice acting to, they really are impactful, integral moments, and they feel that way because you have, the voice acting, the cinematic angles, and it feels just like, oh shit, what, I gotta pay attention to this, But some of these scenes they've added, I really appreciated. Right in the beginning, when Cecil and Kain get out of King Baron's chamber, I suppose, after being told to go to Mysidia and perform the mission, you get a cutscene of Cecil and Kain training together when they were younger, maybe when they were first starting to be knights, and it really adds, to that kind of feeling of brotherhood between the two. Because originally you see that Kain sticks up for Cecil, and Kain is kind of acting, he's very cool, he's not worried, he's confident, and so you get that, vibe from Kain immediately of like, oh, this is a cool dude, this is Cecil's close friend, and he calls him my friend. But having scenes like that just only adds to the experience. It only shows the bond between them, and I think it's a universal positive. I don't think it detracts anything by, adding a little bit onto the pacing or anything. I think it's very good. Now I wanted to move into the gameplay component itself, and the difficulty increase in Final Fantasy IV really surprised me. I'd heard about the difficulty increase in this 3D version, of course, but experiencing it for myself, I really like it. I can definitely see how it may get annoying going forward, and maybe needing to grind, whether it's for levels or just money. From what I've played so far, from the beginning of the game all the way to Magnet Cave, the increase in difficulty has been a really, a breath of fresh air. And yes, I'm speaking as somebody who's played through Final Fantasy IV multiple times, so I do know the game in and out to a certain extent, but I just think that the increase in difficulty forces the player to engage with the turn-based system a bit more and just be a bit more conscientious of how they're going to go about things. It forces you not only to just have good RPG playing etiquette, stocking up on potions, status healing items, the normal RPG conventions, but it kind of asks the player to, look around the towns, talk to people, whether it's just to get advice on maybe they have something of a weakness that a monster has, or maybe there's an item hidden in their house, or maybe you have to use one of those illustrious elixirs that you want to hold on to the very end of the game. Maybe you got to use a bomb scroll or something that normally you forget about in your inventory. It forces the player to just engage with that turn-based system, and I always think that's a good thing. I love turn-based combat, and I think it's so much more deep than a lot of people give it credit for, and having this intense difficulty, I think, is a great way to have the player engage with such a deep system. And again, I can see how it will get annoying. It already has in certain parts, when you're like, oh, I just gotta grind, even if it's just to get some more healing items so I can continue through this cave or something. But I think on the whole, more difficulty I appreciate more rather than if I was just steamrolling through it, because it also adds a feeling of impact to the adventure, I guess I want to say, because when you're going through a dungeon, it should feel hard. It should feel, like a challenge to overcome, whereas sometimes in original Final Fantasy IV, at least nowadays, and again, I have the experience with it, but when I just blast through a dungeon in 2 minutes, that impact is kind of taken away. And I guess I just like having that feeling of having to struggle through this cave that I don't know and really pay attention to what are these monsters, what moves do they got, oh, what's the best way to deal with this formation of enemies, and I like that, and I think someone going into this game, while yes, they may struggle with the difficulty, it'll remain memorable in their minds. Whether or not that's a good thing, is up to personal preference. But I personally really appreciated it, and I thought it added a unique quality to the RPG. Lastly, I just want to touch on the music. The remixes of, Final Fantasy IV, already hands down one of the greatest, soundtracks in all Final Fantasy. It's got to be up there with 8, 9, 7, really the entire fucking series. Nobuo Uematsu is an amazing composer, one of my absolute favorites. I'll be here all day if I start talking to him. But 4 is one of his crowning jewels and many crowning jewels, and I think the remixes they did for the DS version are just incredible, man. I was really surprised with the sound quality too. I'm not usually like an audiophile or anything like that, but it sounds so good for being on a DS cartridge and a DS console. So yeah, just all around, I really think this version of Final Fantasy IV is something special. I believe you can get it on Steam or mobile now. I don't know how those ports are, sorry if they're like horrendous, but at least on DS, the original system was released on. Whatever means you go about getting that is up to you, but I really think it's great. It's hard, you're in for a difficult RPG, but if you can lock in and kind of get around that, and are up for the challenge, I think you're in for, still an amazing RPG. I still think Final Fantasy IV has something great to offer. The modern gamer, or if you're a fan of RPGs, you should absolutely have already played this. But, it definitely has that extra kick to it. I know even a lot of my friends, going to a game like Final Fantasy IV Original, in 2025, it's kind of a tough pill to swallow. A lot of people don't want to lock in for an older looking game like that. I personally love it. I don't think, it's something that should determine whether or not you play a game. But if you're one of those people, or if you know someone like that and you really want them to experience Final Fantasy IV, maybe give the 3D version a shot. I really enjoyed it. The cutscenes they add, I think, are great. The voice acting, really, really well done too. I think the combat is great still. The difficulty, A+ in my book. Music's great. It's a great game, man. So yeah. Let me know your favorite version of Final Fantasy IV. I know a lot of you are probably gonna say the PSP version. And that's a great version. I love this too. I don't know where this stacks, if this is my all-time favorite one, but I really like it. I've so far I haven't finished it, but got them on Magnet Cave, but it's great so far. Just wanted to talk about it while it's fresh in my head, because I just was grinding it like all day. So yeah, that's about it. Later.